You wake up one morning and walk outside to find your neighbor has built a fence, except it's not on their property, it's on yours. Maybe by a few inches, maybe by several feet. Either way, your land is now on the wrong side of someone else's fence, and your neighbor is acting like nothing happened. So what do you actually do? Can they legally keep it there? Do you have to go to court? And what happens if you just do nothing? The answers to those questions matter more than most people realize, because in some states, doing nothing for long enough can actually cost you your own land. This is what the law says about neighbor fences on your property. Welcome back to Plain Verdict. Let's get into it. Property boundary disputes are one of the most common and most emotionally charged legal conflicts between neighbors in the United States. They happen in cities, suburbs, and rural areas alike, and they can escalate from a minor inconvenience to a full-blown legal battle surprisingly quickly. Today, we're breaking down exactly what the law says when your neighbor builds a fence on your property, what your rights are, what your options are, and why acting quickly matters more than most people think. Before we get into what you can do, let's establish how property lines actually work, because this is where most neighbor disputes begin. Your property boundary is not defined by where you think it is, where your neighbor thinks it is, or where a fence has always been. It's defined by your property deed and recorded in your county's official land records. The only way to know exactly where your property line is with legal certainty is through a professional property survey, a process where a licensed surveyor uses your deed, official records, and physical measurements to establish the precise legal boundary of your land. If you don't have a recent survey, you genuinely don't know exactly where your property line is. And neither does your neighbor. This matters enormously because any legal action over a boundary dispute starts with establishing exactly where that line legally falls. Before doing anything else about a fence dispute, the first step is almost always getting a survey. When a structure, like a fence, crosses onto your property without your permission, it's called an encroachment. Encroachment is a legal term that simply means someone else's property or structure is intruding on your land. And here's the critical legal point. As a property owner, you have the right to the exclusive use and enjoyment of every inch of your legally defined land. A fence that sits 6 inches over your property line is legally no different from one that sits 6 feet over it. Your neighbor does not have the right to encroach on your property, regardless of how small the encroachment is, regardless of whether it was intentional, and regardless of how long it's been there. With one very important exception that we're coming to shortly. You have 3 basic options when dealing with an encroachment. Negotiate directly with your neighbor, pursue legal action, or do nothing. Each option has consequences worth understanding before you decide. Here's the part of this video that most people don't know, and it's the most important thing we're going to tell you today. In every US state, there's a legal doctrine called adverse possession, and it means that if someone openly uses and occupies a portion of your property continuously for a specific period of time, without your permission and without you objecting, they can potentially gain legal ownership of that portion of your land. Yes, your neighbor could legally own part of your property just by having their fence in the wrong place for long enough without you doing anything about it. The time period varies significantly by state. In some states like Louisiana, it's as few as 3 years. In others like Maine, it can be up to 20 years. Most states fall somewhere between 5 and 15 years. The exact requirements vary, but the core principle is consistent across the country. Property owners who fail to assert their rights can lose them. This is why doing nothing about a fence encroachment is never truly a neutral decision. Every year you wait is potentially a year closer to your neighbor having a legal claim to your land. So what do you actually do when you discover your neighbor's fence is on your property? Here's the practical escalation ladder most property attorneys recommend. Option 1. Direct conversation. Before anything else, talk to your neighbor calmly and factually. Show them the survey results. Many fence encroachments are genuine mistakes. A neighbor who built in good faith based on a wrong assumption is usually more willing to resolve things cooperatively than one who feels ambushed by legal action. Option 2. Formal written notice. If conversation doesn't resolve, send a written letter by certified mail, formally notifying your neighbor of the encroachment, referencing your survey, and requesting they remove or relocate the fence within a reasonable time frame, typically 30 days. This creates an official paper trail and puts your neighbor on formal legal notice, which is important if the situation escalates. Option 3, mediation. Many counties offer low-cost or free neighbor dispute mediation services. A neutral third-party mediator can often help neighbors reach an agreement without going to court. Option 4, legal action. If all else fails, you can file a lawsuit to establish your property boundary legally and seek a court order requiring fence removal. Courts can also award damages for the encroachment, including the cost of your survey and legal fees in some cases. Before we close, there are two additional layers worth knowing about that complicate fence disputes beyond simple property lines. First, local ordinances. Most cities and counties have specific regulations governing fences, maximum height restrictions, required setbacks from property lines, permitted materials, and in some areas permit requirements before a fence can be built at all. A fence that's technically on your neighbor's property might still be illegal if it violates local height restrictions or was built without a required permit. Check your local municipal code or contact your city's planning department. Second, HOA rules. If you live in a neighborhood with a homeowners association, their rules may govern fence disputes, required fence styles, and dispute resolution processes independently of local law. HOA violations can result in fines and forced removal regardless of where the property line falls. Understanding which rules apply in your specific situation is essential before taking any legal action. Here's your practical action plan if you're dealing with this right now. Step 1. Get a professional property survey immediately. This is non-negotiable. Without a survey, you have no legal standing and no factual basis for any conversation or legal action. Step 2. Document everything. Photograph the fence, measure its position relative to your property markers, and keep records of all communications with your neighbor from this point forward. Step 3. Send formal written notice if direct conversation fails. Certified mail, factual and calm, referencing your survey, and requesting resolution within 30 days. Step 4. Check your local ordinances and HOA rules. Your neighbor's fence might be violating additional regulations beyond the property line issue, which strengthens your position significantly. Step 5. Consult a property attorney if the situation doesn't resolve quickly. Many offer free initial consultations, and property boundary cases are well-established areas of law with clear precedents. Given the adverse possession risk, the cost of legal advice is almost always worth it compared to the potential cost of losing part of your land. A neighbor's fence on your property might seem like a minor inconvenience, but the law of adverse possession means that minor inconvenience can become a permanent loss of your land if you wait too long to act. The good news is that the law is clearly on your side as the property owner, as long as you assert your rights promptly and follow the right steps. If this video helped you subscribe to Plain Verdict, we break down a new legal concept every week in plain language. And if you're dealing with a neighbor dispute right now, drop your situation in the comments. We read every single one.